Hello everybody, this is Shannon with Beads and Babble. I am back with another tutorial. This one is going to be about even count peyote stitch. And we're going to make some really cute little eternity band rings using it. And it's a very fun stitch, a very beginner friendly stitch. I learned, this was the first stitch I learned when I began to bead weave, and I was pretty young, so it was really easy to catch on to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what we'll be using. Some of these tools you may or may not need, depends on what you'll be using. If you do have like a ring mandrel, that's great for sizing these rings, because it's kind of difficult depending on the thickness of the beads that you choose, a pattern, how you're going to end it. Sometimes, you know, you have to go a little bit bigger to complete a pattern, or a little smaller. You can do it like the old-fashioned way of when you're sizing rings in metalsmithing, going by using pi and the thickness of the material and such. But I think the easiest way for a beginner is to get one of these little ring mandrels. And this is actually a wax carving one, but it's light and it's plastic, but it works just the same with the sizes. And this is US sizes from 1 to 15. And they're not very expensive. But if you don't have this, you can just measure it, if you're making them for yourself, around your finger as you're going through the steps of making the bead. Oh, and you can also do it if you know your size, you're in, you know, you can use a ruler or whatever, but I think it's going to be more beneficial if you have a ring mandrel, or if you just making it for yourself, sizing it on your finger. You'll need some sharp shears for cutting the thread. Threads, you can use a wide range of threads. You can use Nemo, you can use KO, or Nemo, KO, you can use Wildfire, Fireline, C-Lon, S-Lon. There's pretty much what you have on hand will be fine for rings. You will want something relatively strong, because a ring is something that's going to get a lot of wear, because it's on your hand and you're always doing stuff with your hands. I like KO. I do like a Fireline as well, like 6 pound, 4 to 6 pound Fireline would work great. I haven't personally used Wildfire yet, but it comes in a wide array of colors, which is nice. KO is nice too, because it tends to stretch but stretch back, so that's kind of important when you're, you know, wearing a ring, is, you know, the stretching part of it. And that's another thing, when you are sizing this, err on the side of maybe a little smaller, because the thread will tend to stretch over time. So that way, then, if it's a little snug at first, it's going to stretch a little bit. But they're fairly comfortable to wear. And this one here I made using check 10-aught or 10-0, but aught is just a check measurement, and that's what it's technically called when you see the number with a, you know, 11 and a 0. That's why you hear me referring to it as aught rather than 10-0 or 11-0, but I know a lot of people do, so I wanted to make sure that I clarified that, because you might be going, what is 11-aught or what is 10-aught? But yeah, they're very comfortable, and the smaller the beads, even more comfortable they are, because you're not having any kind of bumping up against, but they're, you know, the beads are nice and rounded, and the curvature doesn't bother me when I squeeze into a fist. That's kind of how I always, or if I push my fingers together, I don't want something that's going to be digging into my other finger. So I find these fairly comfortable. I made quite a few of them here because, as you know, I have 5 granddaughters, and they all love jewelry, thankfully. So I made these using 11-aught or 11-0 Delica beads. And I'll show you, I stitched up some pattern here using 8s to kind of show you the difference, because when I was doing the midnight fringe earrings, I was explaining how the delicas line up and stack real well together on the brick stitch. And this is a peyote stitch, flat peyote, even count stitch. So it does the same thing. So these, and that makes it kind of comfortable, well, more comfortable too, is having them nicely interlocking together, the beads. And so I made all these ones with those particular beads. And I used KO thread on all of those for the girls. And you can also go to the website and print your peyote seed bead grafting paper, and then you can actually cut it into strips. This is you're more concerned with the even count row. So this is a 6. There's 6 rows here in depth, and then I'm not sure how long I'm going to go depending on the size of the ring, but I kind of wanted to show you guys that you can actually draw out some patterns for these rings, and they're really cute. I mean, there's endless combinations. So, and they're also just kind of relaxing to make. It's a very relaxing therapeutic stitch. And I'll set that over there because I'm not going to do a pattern today. I'm going to keep it real simple and just do a singular color and show you the stitch, and then you guys can go wild with whatever creations you decide to make. You may or may not want to use some thread conditioner. It's not necessary, but if you want to, you can. So what I have here is I stitched up, and here at the top is, I'm going to draw you in here a little bit so you can see better. This is a 6/0 seed bead, and it's just a stopper bead. It helps, and it's especially helpful for beginners to have. Some people don't like using a stopper bead. Proof. Oh, nope. Proof. Sorry. Unexpected bark. Sorry. Some people use it, some people don't. I find that it is very good for beginners to use because it helps keep the first few rows in line while you're getting the stitch or the actual stitching down. So these are check 8/0 seed beads, and these are Toho seed beads, 8/0. And as you can see, there's clearly a difference. And I mentioned this a lot in the videos, the difference between Japanese seed beads and Czech seed beads. Quality is still very good on both. Consistency is different though. Like the holes on Japanese seed beads are more consistent than Czech because of the process in which they're made. Doesn't mean they're any less quality, it's just they're made differently. And they both serve different purposes. So depends on what you're making or how you like your beadwork to look. Now, as you can see, these stack up a little bit better than these do because you have more inconsistent size range and they're squatty. And then I printed out this to kind of show you the difference. Now, this is what a Delica seed bead or a Toho treasure looks like. It's cylindrical, so it's more like a cylinder, and it has nice straight sides with a decent hole. They have really nice big holes. And then a Czech glass seed bead, which is, as you can see, generally has a smaller hole, and it's very round and kind of squatty, and it curves along the edge. So that curvature is what causes the gaps in between your stitches, because this side does not meet up like it does with the Delicas. And I find that the Tohos have even though they're classified as a seed bead and not a Delica or a treasure, they tend to have a more straight edge to them. So they stack a little neater as you're stitching. So it all depends on how you want your beadwork to your finished product to look and which bead you choose. Like I said, both are wonderful beads. I use both. I think anybody that's in the beading craft, utilizes all the beads for different purposes and loves them for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue stitching this one, and I'm going to show you how the beads, I'll also show you how they start here in just a second, but I wanted to show you it's really a nice therapeutic stitch because you're literally picking up a single bead, maybe, there we go, get it on the bead mat, much easier, and you're coming and going through these beads that are protruding from the design, and you'll find that it just comes down and stacks nicely in there. And this is what is called the flat peyote stitch. There is an even count and an odd count. The odd count's a little harder. There's a couple extra steps you got to take, but the even count is super simple. And as you can see, it does nicely. So I'm going to start a new one just to show you how to start it, because it's that's the most important part, is starting. I'm going to grab another 6/0 seed bead, and generally I do these rings, depends on the size, but a yard or 3 feet or so of this thread is usually plenty. And you can use a size 11 or 10 beading needle. It just depends on which you prefer. Those are both all around really nice beading needles for most of your stitching, your stitches. So now that we've threaded the needle with your choice of thread, you're going to go up through the 6/0. This is a stopper bead. Leave about a 5 to 6 inch tail, and then you're going to go back up through the bottom of it, and this is just a stopper bead. It's going to come off. It's not going to stay, and you're getting that thread around the bead just to hold it in place. Now we're going to do a 6 row, because peyote doesn't matter if you want to do 2. Well, you have to do 4, 6, 8. It just has to be an even count of beads. That's hence the name even count peyote. So I'm going to pick up 6 of these light gray Toho size 8 seed beads. Thread them down. Now they're up against the stopper bead. And then I'm just going to flip it over so the stopper bead is up at the top. And then I'm going to grab a single bead onto the needle. I'm going to skip this first bead and go up through the second bead with the needle. And don't worry if it gets a little fiddly on you. Just grab that, hold that stopper bead, and pull up. Pull them all up. This is the hardest part of this stitch, is getting the beads, the first row or 2 started. And once you do that, so we're going to pick up another 8/0. We're going to skip this bead because we're coming out of this one. We're going to skip this bead and go up the next. So you're skipping a bead in between each time you're adding to it. You're going to kind of get this little Tetris effect here. And then you're going to pick up another one. You're going to skip this bead. The thread's coming out of this one. You're going to skip this one and go up the last bead. Not through the stopper bead, just through the 8/0. It's always nice to have the stop bead a different color or a bigger bead so you can see the difference. Now this is what you should have at the end, and this is forming the first and the second row going this way. Is this kind of Tetris, if you turned it this way, Tetris type shape, and you're going to now be filling in the gaps between the beads. So now some people flip their designs, or flip it because they like to go up with the needle or down with the needle. I do it both ways. I don't really have a particular one. I just keep going. So now I'm going to be going through this protruding. I'm picking up bead and going through this protruding bead here and stitching it on, picking up another one. It's like I said, it's very therapeutic, and it's just, you get into this rhythm and it's so nice. And don't worry if it's a little loose right now. We'll tighten it up here in just a second. And when you're tightening this stitch, you want to keep it fairly, oops, I just threw off that bead. Did you guys see that? Happens a lot. I'm just pulling up the design and the making sure that it's staying kind of snug here. Picking up another 8/0 toho and going down through the last. I use these bigger beads because it's a little easier to see, but you can do this stitch with any size seed beads you desire. And now you'll see you have a continued pattern. So now you're going to just pick up another bead and you're going to go up through the protruding bead. It's every other bead. Picking up another bead and going through, avoiding the tail of the other piece of thread. You'll want to tell, because you're going to, in order to secure this stitch, you're going to be weaving that tail back through the design. And just pull up on the threads and it'll tighten tighten all the beads up really nicely. And now once you get about 3 to 4 rows, you'll find that it holds together nicely. So now I'm going to pick up a bead and go through the protruding beads again. Almost, you're just like doing a zigzag through the protruding beads, back and forth weaving. Super easy, fun stitch to do, relaxing, which we all need our bead therapy here. And as you can see, it's coming along nicely. Now you'll continue to do this pattern until you get to the length that you desire for your ring. And then at the end, you'll be stitching this up and almost like a zipper or a corset at the end, using the same stitching pattern that you are throughout the whole thing here as you're building your length. And as you can see, you just keep going, and you can make this thicker or thinner, because these are here that I did for the girls are 4 with a 4/11/0 delicacy beads. And this is kind of big. I did it proof. Stop. My little corgi wiener dog is being mischievous today. He's the baby and he is full of himself. All right, so you continue on with this stitch, and as you can see, those protruding beads are the ones that I am going through as I pick up additional beads, going through, only 1, not 2, and then pulling the thread up so it slides into place, picking up, going through. Getting started on this stitch is the hardest part, to be honest. And then once you get it started, it's really hard to mess up. Unless it's like smaller beads and you might miss one, just make sure that you're going through only 1 bead, not several. And also try, if you can, to not splice through the thread with the needle. So a lot of times I will, in order to avoid that, I will take the needle and I'll kind of point it upwards and scrape along the bead, and to avoid the thread. Just less likely for your thread to get damaged and want to break after, a while. You want to keep the integrity of the thread. good while you're doing this. So that's why I always usually angle my needle upwards and along, scrape it along the bead that is inside of the bead. And I'm going to continue stitching, and I'm going to try to make sure that you guys are getting a good view of the stitching while I'm doing it here. That's why I use the bigger beads. And then you can turn it if it's easier for you guys to work with it. And if you need to tighten it up, usually grab this last bead and give the thread a good tug, and then it'll tighten up nicely for you. And then we're going to go through this next protruding bead with the needle. Get this long enough that I can close it up for you. You can actually see how that's done, which is super simple as well. Not difficult. And you can make a ton of these rings in no time at all. They don't take long at all. These rings are not generally too big. And you can also take this pattern and make bracelets out of it. You don't have to just do rings. You can do bracelets. Makes a really nice bracelet. And I'll probably do a bracelet at some point too to show you how to attach a clasp or make a clasp out of this too, which is super easy as well. Honestly, I think people are intimidated by beadwork because it looks so intricate. Certain stitches are harder than others, of course, and you can get really elaborate with your beadwork. Because there's some beautiful bead artists that, oh my goodness, they do such intricate designs. It's just gorgeous. But a lot of these stitches are very beginner friendly, and they look intimidating, but they honestly are not. And you can do a lot with the peyote stitch. You can stitch around things with it to put, make covers. I know a lot of people use them for, making just around personal items and stuff like pins and such. So but a ring is a really good way to get started with a stitch without having to get too elaborate, and you get a finished product you get to wear. And like I said, these eternity bands are very comfortable to wear. So, and I find that the teenagers like them a lot too. so they've got that cool factor. I know my girls like to wear rings a lot, and hoop earrings, which they're a little young yet for the really drapey ones. Their ears are too young for the heavier hoops, so I told them I'd make them some silver hoops here shortly, which I got to get on. But I've had so many things in the works lately, and I've been so busy. I was just like, ooh, finding time. And I love this too because it's so relaxing for me to do and be able to. I find when I'm creating, I just kind of, everything else seems to melt away, the stress and stuff, which is nice. I think this is why it's so addicting for everybody. Once you get started in the beadwork, you get addicted to it. But as you can see, the length's coming along nicely. I'll do a little bit more, and I'm going to close it up, even though it's not technically going to be a ring. This is more for demonstration. But I wanted to show you with bigger beads and thread that was contrasting to the bead color, so you could really get an idea of how, see, now that this is another, I got talking, but see, I pierced the thread with a needle here. And that's what happens if you pierce the thread. It kind of, and this is the flat Nemo thread. So you're just basically going to have to take the needle off and pull it loose, just that one loose, and then rethread it. That's why you want to avoid piercing the thread with your needle, because it'll cause nothing but problems with the integrity of the thread and also knotting on you, which is the worst. When you're doing any kind of stitch work, loom work, a knot is like the devil. It is the worst thing, especially if you're halfway through your piece and you get a knot somewhere along the line. That's why it's important to keep constantly making sure that your thread integrity is good. There's no kinks there. That's why conditioner is nice too, because it'll help avoid that. Oh my goodness, watch this bead like the one time I can. And if you have trouble, you can always clip off the end, give it a kind of a taper there, so you can thread it through a little bit easier. If you can see the hole in the needle, which tends to give me issues. And then I constantly will run the thread through my fingers, because you do not want any kind of kinks or anything in the thread, because that tends to encourage knots, and you do not want a knot. And you want to avoid piercing, like I said, the thread with the needle. So I'll hold it this way too, so you can see, I think, a better angle. And then I just pull up with the thread. I'm keeping the design nice and snug and tight against each other. Beads, pulling down, avoiding the thread with my needle, or trying to. And if you do find like you've pierced the thread, just back out and pull loose so you don't have any issues. Probably go a couple more rows, and then I'll close it up to show you how that's done. There's a couple ways of doing it. There's some people like to knot. Some people do not like to knot, and they just like to weave back through the pattern in various directions to secure the thread at the end. I'll show you both with one side and the other. That way you can do it however you feel you want to do it. Both are secure closures. There is no wrong or right. It's just what you feel most comfortable doing. And then going from there. And when you are doing a ring and you're finishing up the length, you're going to have to make sure that you have opposing teeth on each side so they interlock when you go to close them up. I'm going to do, I think, 2 more rows, and then I'm going to close up for you guys. And then you can go on your own adventure with a stitch and create a bunch of rings, or even longer bracelets. Like I said, you can do all kinds of really cool things with this, and then you can put patterns on as well using the bead chart information. I will put down in the description of this video for you, and they're free. I think I forgot to mention this on the Moonlight Fringe earrings, but they are a free downloadable printable product on my website, beadsandbabble.com. You just have to add it to your cart and check out. There is no cost or anything. It's just a process that I have to go through for my my website in order for it to be a digital download. And as you can see how nicely the thread bridges are. And I'm using a contrasting thread, but usually I would use something that blended in with these beads. So, alrighty. So let's see where we're at. Do I have opposing teeth? Yes, I do. And now I'm going to bring the sides together. You can pinch it kind of like this too, which will probably make it the easiest. Pinch the sides together. And with the thread coming out of the bottom here, bead, I'm going to go up through the protruding bead on the opposite side. And then I'm going to zigzag and go across the design and through the protruding bead on the other side. Now I'm going to do the same. Go across and through the protruding bead, zigzagging the thread through the pattern of the beads here, through the protruding, and it's through the protruding beads on each side of the design, crisscrossing it like shoelaces. Oops, drop the needle. And as you can see, it laces up that design really nicely. Now I'm going to pull off this stopper bead. You just grab it and pull it off so I can go down this last bead that is holding the other tail to close up that design. And look how nicely that is. I mean, it just cinches it right up. Now I'm going to go back through the beads to reinforce, and I'm following the pattern of the beads through the bottom. Go over to the next one here, up. And now I'm going to kind of work myself along the pattern here of the beads, and then I'm going to go down and around in circles. And all this is doing is reinforcing and also finishing the end here. Okay, and then you'll want, go down here, one down here. Now, some people will do a knot. They'll take it a next step, and what they'll do is they'll take the needle and find the thread between the beads here. Finding the thread and going under it with the needle until you get that loop. And then you're going to take the needle, this little loop a little bit smaller here, and you're going to go through the loop with the needle, twist it around. Actually do 2 or 3 times. So you form the knot, and then you're going to pull, avoiding this tail here. You don't want that in there. That one out of the way. And then that's going to create a knot as you pull it down in there. And then you're going to continue weaving. Hide that knot. Usually I'll go into a circle pattern. Opposite directions. Making sure that it's hiding between. Come on, thread. I did go under. Hold on. I went under the thread bridge on the last one here, and I don't want to do that. We're going to take that out. Rethread this real quick. Glad you're seeing all these oopsies, and that way then you know that that's not something you want to do, and you want to avoid that. Make sure you're making clean passes of the thread and the needle through the beads, not catching any of the other bead thread in between that's woven in between them, unless you're making a knot, which you're wanting to get the beading needle underneath the thread when you make that knot. Cutting this off a little bit so I can get it through this needle here. The eye of the needle, I should say. Maybe. Some people make this look so easy, but my eyes are getting so bad. That's why I don't do as much bead weaving anymore. I need to get one of those really nice lights that have the magnifier on them. Pick this up again and start where I left off here. Oh, up through this one and oops, off camera here. Sorry. Oh, geez. 1 too far, 3 too far. I'm telling you. All right, pulling that a little tighter there. Go up through 2 more beads if I could get the needle to go where I want it to. Maybe, maybe. And then I'm going to cut this off with close to the beads. Pull the thread. Give it a good clean clip. All right. Now for this side. So you'll thread this shorter tail on that we left in the beginning that was holding the stopper bead. Thread the needle. It's a little bit sort of a taper. I always find it's a little bit easier for me to thread if I have a taper on the end of the thread. Might not be the case for you. You might be a pro and be able to slide it through, no problem. All right. So now this end, go through, and all I'm going to do is weave it through the pattern of the beads. Like I did before, going back and forth in a circle. What you're doing is you're just entrapping the thread into the beads. This one I will not knot. I don't want to lose my end here. I will not knot. All I'm doing is securing the thread using the pattern of the beads alone. So I'll go down a few rows, through a few beads, and then I will do a circle pattern. I'll lock that thread in. But by all means, either one of these will work. I'll do that. Either one of these tie-offs will work. Went down 1 too many beads. I didn't want to do that. All right, so I just pulled that thread out. And then no knot this time. Just use the actual in and out weaving of the pattern of the beads to secure that one. And then this is what you'll end up with. A nice circular. And this is another thing too, is you can use this. Actually, I'll do a little bit smaller, maybe an 8. So you can see it. But that is what you're shooting for. Sorry, I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what this will look like. And you'll make it as long, or a pattern, as long as you're doing an even count, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. You can make it as wide as you desire, but you have to have an even number of beads in order to do this even peyote flat stitch. But you can make all kinds of cute little things using this stitch. And you can use a wide variety of beads. You can use 10-aught. You can use 8. If you like a bigger, chunkier ring, you can use the 8. You can use delicacy beads. These are 11s. They make them in the treasures, the Toho treasures, the Mayuki delicas. They make them in all different types. You can use 11-aught regular seed beads. You can use a variety of different embellishments if you want. If you can sew those onto the beads themselves, which I might pop in and show you at a later date, how to add embellishments onto all the bands of the rings. But this is more like an eternity band, so it's a simple band that has no embellishments, but is a continuous circle. And they're very, very comfortable to wear. So I'm going to put that one back up there. These I'm going to ship off to my girls now that they are done, and they are Pacific colors that they like. So, and that one's a little bit of a pattern for my one granddaughter that likes a really dark red and black combo. And then this is kind of just a pastel one that my other granddaughter really likes pastels, and she likes pinks, purples, and yellows and stuff. And then this one I just whipped up because I wanted you guys to see the difference in the seed beads, or check seed beads versus delicas, the more cylindrical beads, and how they stack. Alrighty, well, I think that'll wrap this video up. I know it was lengthy. I'm sorry about that, but I find that teaching techniques require a more in-depth tutorial, and I don't really care what YouTube algorithm says about it has to be 15 minutes or what, but I'm here to help you guys learn and get your bead therapy in. So until the next tutorial, I'll be seeing you guys, and thanks again for subscribing to the channel, liking, and leaving comments. You're greatly appreciated.